Morning, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing. I am your moderator host, Lauren Gray, and we're at show number 244. And with us, we have a special guest co-host, Mr. James Gankos, President and CEO of The Guestbook. Good morning, Mr. Gankos.
Good morning.
I actually asked that question.
You blew it.
Is it James? What, just pick me. And also Mr. Robert Cole, our perennial co-host of Many Talents.
A perennial? No, wait. I'm not a big gardener. I'm not sure if that means I come back every year.
You're a flower in the world of men.
Like kind of die off for a while.
James has joined us. It's been kind of like a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend. We finally got to be able to connect. I think somebody that is a fan of our show, I think, started the process of the conversation, and it is a pleasure to actually have you on the show. Love to hear more about anything you want to talk about, to be honest with you. So I'll actually literally turn it over to you to say, what would you like to talk about today?
Well, I want to talk about what you guys want to talk about, but I guess I would be doing myself an injustice not to give a few tidbits about the company first.
Please. Yes, of course. I actually, what a couple of my clients, we actually use your product, and I see it from a third-person perspective of that. The property handles it much more than we do. We work with it, but we don't work on it all the time. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about where it came from. Since you're founder of it as well, I mean, what was the inspiration and what direction and all that you intended to have with this?
Yeah, I'll tell you the story of how it got started. So I was working for Starwood Hotels for about 10 years, both at the corporate level as director of ops for North America, and then out in the properties. And I went from Sheraton Kauai Resort to Sheraton Seattle to Planet Hollywood in Las Vegas, when that used to be part of Starwood's system back in the day. And I was actually there during the depths of the Great Recession. So I was there in 2009 until early 2010. And actually, because of that Great Recession, Starwood exited their JV on that property, and Caesars came in and took it over, Harrah's and then Caesars. And so it freed me up to basically call my next shot. And I was like, I've done some resort properties, some different cities, even, big Vegas casino, 2,500 rooms. And my girlfriend at the time and I said, let's go to Europe. So I made it to Europe by about 100 yards, I say. I was at the W Istanbul, and we were 100 yards from the Bosphorus, and then the other side to Asia. But anyways, got to go be the GM of that hotel from 2010 to mid 2012, and it was really there that kind of the Guestbook story started while I was working for Starwood. I was kind of in the U.S. Majority of my peers that I met in the markets were chain operators, and didn't have had some independent friends that, but it really was a little bit different picture. But in Istanbul, all the hotels were independents except for a few large chains. And so we would have our monthly GM lunches, and I would, be talking to my peers, and it was probably, 2/3 or more were independents. And they were always saying how crazy it was that, they're like, we have no direct business. The OTAs are killing us with commissions. It's so hard. We can't even talk to our guests. And I thought that was really interesting. And at the W Istanbul, we didn't really have that problem. We had a huge base of guests who booked direct, and we knew them well. We had a great loyalty program. And I asked myself, what is it? What's the difference here? It's not like, some of these independents actually had very nice websites and good booking experience even back then. And I think Starwood had a decent one at that time too, but it wasn't night and day. That wasn't the reason. And when I got to looking at it, it really came down to this one little caveat. If you booked on thebrand.com, you got your SPG points and your status. And if you booked on an OTA, you didn't get it. So by and large, even if there was rate parity issues back then, people would still book direct because, that old SPG loyalty status was worth gold.
Fairly rich, rich compensation for playing the game. So
exactly. So I thought, hey, that's a really interesting dynamic. Maybe there's a way to help my independent friends with this. But I was in Istanbul, didn't really have much of a chance to do anything. I didn't really figure out how to help them with that problem at that point in time. But I had created this one program at Starwood called Make a Green Choice when I was at Sheraton Seattle, and that's where, I don't know if you guys ever came across it, but you do client housekeeping and get $5 and 500 SPG points.
Yeah.
And when we added in the loyalty component, it started out just being, it's a long story, but when we added in the SPG points, when that thing took off like crazy.
Oh,
And it, became an industry phenomenon. And a lot of other, hotel groups have done it since then. But I was like, maybe there's some way to give rewards to independents to help them with this OTA problem. Anyways, moved on from Istanbul, took a job at one of my favorite hotels, the W Los Angeles in Westwood, and was there for about a year and a half. That was in 2012 to end of 2013. And while I was there, it basically hit me that if hey, I could actually execute this, better deal for Booking Direct with rewards, because it doesn't count against rate parity if you give rewards. It's different phenomenon. I could do that for independents with a cash back program. This is the same time that you had, all these Capital One, what's in your wallet, cash back things. And they're kind of prompting me, hey, that's a good way we maybe could execute. And by the way, we could start with even one hotel and give value. We don't have to have the whole network in place at that time to give a better deal for Booking Direct, right? Same price plus X dollars cash back. And so I was sitting with one of my good friends who owns a bunch of small boutique hotels here in Southern California at the backyard of the W. That was the name of the restaurant. And we were having a drink. We were talking about the industry, probably a lot of the same conversation that you guys talk about, that type of banter back then. And it hit me, hey, I know how to pull this thing off. And so from that day on, I think 3 days later, I had a presentation together on what this cash rewards program might look like, and went out and raised friends and family money for the first round, gave my notice, found a CTO, and founded the guest book in November 2013. So we've been up for 6 years, and basically the goal is to help independent hotels get more direct bookings and a repeat following. It's come a long way since then. I can give you guys a few of the little tidbits. I got some things here to share. But this group, I'm hoping that there's lots of good questions here, because that will be very good when I go through. But any questions so far?
No, nothing yet. And on the other channel,
I got a couple.
Good to see you.
Oh, and Stuart has joined us. Welcome, Stuart.
Yes, I was about to say, this is Stuart Butler. James.
Hey, Stuart.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, thanks.
Now, there were actually two things that I thought were relatively unique. One was you moved to Istanbul with your girlfriend, who didn't say, I thought for sure you were going to say at that point, she said, no, 60, 70 hours a week as a GM, I am not signing up for that. And that's when you started the guest. But I don't know if that relationship lasted.
Actually, that's what the story was going to start too. Like, well, that didn't go well.
That's pretty impressive. And then the second one was a lot of people will give notice, then go look for friends and family money. So very, very important strategic thing. Get your funding first, then quit your job. Sort of thing, if you're going to bootstrap like that. So anyway.
James, Tim Peter down here also. He just joined us as well. Tim?
James?
Hey, Tim.
Good. How are you?
Good morning. Good afternoon. Good day, everybody. How are you?
Hey, good day. Yeah, Robert, actually, so on the first point, so that my girlfriend, she also worked for Starwood, and amazingly, she was in a different state. We met at Sheraton Kauai, and then we were doing long distance, and I told Starwood, hey, she's moving with me, and she was working at the W Hotels in New York at the time, and so they actually let her work at the hotel. It was amazing.
Wow.
First, they said, hey, she's going to work for Ownership Group because they need someone who knows the W at the Ownership Group side. And then at the end of the day, they said, no, we don't want her talents being at the owner side, so we're going to put the hotel. So a lot of pros and cons working with your girlfriend, but luckily she's now my wife. We have 2 kids, and
I was going to say, if that relationship didn't turn out, she might have been one. If she's going to do that, you might want to. That would have been a keeper. So good, glad it worked out. So
yeah. So, anyways, that's a little history about the idea behind the guest book, and let me see if I can get this sharing right here. I'm just going to show you guys a couple of slides and not go through a whole deck, but just to give you a feel of some of the dynamics of the program, where it's come. So let's see. I want to share screen.
And Lauren, did you advise James on the importance of not touching anything that's red?
Yeah.
Yeah, don't hit the blinky button in the corner. That's important not to hit the button in the corner.
Yeah, anything red, just
it's very clear in his email. Anyways, I'll just hit a couple of high level slides here, and then we can go into more questions. I'm sure we'll generate many. But important what we believe that a direct relationship between hotels and their guests is more rewarding for everyone. Obviously, we have the use of the word rewards in that topic or that statement. And I should say, the main goal of what we built and why I created Guestbook wasn't just the economics of a direct booking, which of course are extremely important. The main thing is, as a hotelier at heart, I really love that direct guest relationship. And whatever we can do to incentivize better communication and better connection is extremely important. But it's hard to talk about all that to guests. They kind of make their first choice with their wallets, and then they have a chance to learn more. And so, but the main idea is about that connection. We did a survey, and this is a more recent survey we did this last year. We had the insight on cashback being important back in 2013, but we went out and surveyed 1,000 travelers in the U.S. Age 25 plus, and we asked them, "Hey, what incentive would you like, for your hotel stay?" And they basically said, "Hey, cashback is the most most desired," and it's essentially it's flexibility, right? People like knowing what they're going to get, and then having the ability to choose what they want with those things. So it's interesting tidbit. And just to give you something that we've seen recently, we tested this in early 2019 with a bunch of TravelClick hotels that were using the TravelClick Meta product, and we basically now with Google callouts, just to kind of show this from a hotel marketer standpoint, putting something like this, earn 15% cash rewards, it's almost an insurance policy against rate parity violations. So in this particular example that we surveyed, you'll notice that Expedia was actually slightly less than the hotel site, but still 67% choose to book direct because, of course, they're doing the quick math in their head and they're saying, I'm interested in that. 3 goals of the program: boost direct bookings, accelerate retention, and attract new guests. When people use our technology on their booking engine, and I'll show you an example of that in a second, what they see and what we measure through A/B testing, we have 700 plus hotels on the program that we've done this for. They see 20% higher direct booking conversions. The cost after paying out the rewards and fees is 8 to 12 times revenue to cost. And this is really important. You would think that even offering a significant cash back amount to a booker, everyone would take you up on it. But even with cash, it's not the case. Some people, they have to do a 2-step process with our program. They have to enroll in the program and they have to go claim the reward after their stay. If they don't do both those things, the hotel pays nothing, we may pay nothing, or we get nothing. But that breakage is really important. It goes back to the hotel. So essentially 25% of the people claim it, and that's all the hotel has to pay for. And I might get some questions now or later on that. I'm not sure.
I have a couple.
Cool. I'm just going to hit through. There's 3 options that we give guests. So from day one, right after leaving the W in Westwood, we had the 5% cash back via PayPal or gift cards or Bitcoin. But we added on 2 options since then. We added on 5% cash for a cause in 2015. So we use a partner Global Giving, so guests can give back to any of the thousands of charities that they would like to support all around the world. And then the third option that we introduced back in 2016, once our network started getting big enough, was 15% cash forward. So the idea is you can either take your 5% back, or you can apply it and triple it towards a future stay in our network. Only caveat is it has to be in a different destination from where you earned it. So we're encouraging cross-network use, and you have to have at least enough for one night stay. But that's our network effect kicking in. And this is really the core of our product. We have a bunch of other stuff that helps, but in the booking engine experience, we highlight the amount of cash rewards that you'll get on a particular booking. Has a hover over, has an opt-in box. Once you put in your email, it'll recognize you back if you're an existing member. But a very simple kind of native experience that matches the hotel's booking engine branding and everything else. And then the hotels are welcome to talk about this through a number of tools we offer them, from what we call the e-generator on the homepage to capture emails and incentivize them to to get the rewards, to any number of things, which I can go into later. But the whole idea about this was, hey, there's a lot of great digital marketing, advertising, and tools out there to help increase conversion and help people win the business. And this is one little bit that hasn't been out there. And the idea is here not to step on anyone's toes. It's, hey, give a great value add that doesn't cost that much in the grand scheme of things. It's 25% of the guests actually get it, and you pay for that. And instead of offering a discount, which gives something to everyone, you're only giving the extra value to the people who ultimately want it. So I call it the rifle approach to discounting. People have to do 2 steps. It comes after their stay. It's not part of the rate itself.
Yeah. Going back a little bit to the 3 choices as you added them in.
Yeah.
Can you share which one is the more used in that sense? Which one tends to have been the more successful, or is it regionally specific? Is it a type of hotel specific? Is it not really one over the other?
Across the board, cash back wins out big time. What we see on the cash forward standpoint, like charitable donations, probably 3 to 4% of the redemptions. On the cash forward, what happens there is the more luxurious hotels, the people who earn a lot more cash rewards. We have some hotels that have $900 ADRs, for instance. They're earning a ton of value there, and so they have enough to spend elsewhere, so they'll use that. So the higher end hotels will go more towards the cash forward. The other hotels will go more towards cash back. But we're talking about a few percentage points differences, not like major differences.
That's interesting, though. So your higher value customers wind up, being built into the system to go to other properties and other destinations, which is good. So
yeah,
it was just kind of taking the cash and
Yeah, and by the way, people don't have to choose right away. They can sit on this for a while, and then they always have the cash out option. So they can decide now or later. But what we see is most people like to make the decision once they get it. Most people that take the cash back will take it right when we send them the rewards available message.
Yeah.
Did you say there's a 75% breakage? Is that what you said?
Yep, that's right.
25% redemption. Wow.
Right. And so, and that's of all the bookers that see the messaging in the booking engine, right? So if you have 1,000 people going in and making a booking, ultimately 250 of those you'd have to pay out for.
And because of the way this works, you don't run into the Hawaii problem where people either earn heavy at one property or burn heavy at one property, because the earn and burn essentially is the same place, right?
Absolutely. In fact, we don't have anything like loyalty rates. You don't need to do that. When someone redeems cash forward, what they do is they book whatever regular rate is at the hotel, and we triple up the cash back on the back end. So you don't even have any administrative work to do.
But it's back to the same hotel. It's not, I'm burning in the corporate properties and I'm earning in the corporate properties and burning at, a property in Hawaii or the Caribbean.
Yeah. And by the way, obviously people still do earn and burn that way, but for the Hawaii properties, it's a full retail reservation, right? Whatever promo they happen to book, but it's not.
Right.
Yeah. So they're happy to get it. It takes away that resort problem. And, I know that problem very well. I was hotel manager at Sheraton Kauai Resort, right? So
there you go. So yeah, you know it very well.
You still got the scars to show.
people dragging coolers through the lobby, and
So, is there another slide you wanted to show us, or do we want to kick back to the screen? Or
no, I'll just kick back to the screen. I don't know if there's anything else here. Well, we have over 700 hotels in 73 countries. We skew towards the 4 and 5 star. We have over 1.1 million members with attractive demographics. And we introduced this last year. It's funny, for the first 5 years, let's call it 4.5. We told hotels, hey, don't buy us for the network effect. That was actually like a slide. Don't buy us for that, because you'll be disappointed, right? Buy us for the direct booking conversion increase. It'll pay for itself. The ROI, the numbers pencil out. It's 8 to 12 times revenue to cash, or revenue to cost. But then we looked at it. We almost blinded ourselves too much to the benefit that we started having with Cross Network. Where we looked at the end of 2018, we said, "Wow, there's actually a lot of stuff going on here. Let's put this into action somehow now in our sales pitch." So this is it. Now it's that we'll produce at least enough cross-network business to cover the rewards fees, or we'll refund the difference. So that's aside from all the direct booking conversion stuff. This is just cross-network.
Wow. Cool.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So, anyways, I will. I have other stuff to share, but maybe let's do some more Q&A, and then we can get to where we need. So let's see. Stop sharing. There.
There we go.
Good.
And we'll go back to video camera. There we go.
Hey, Lauren finally figured out how to do that. That's very impressive. Normally at that point, the show suddenly disconnects.
Well, right now we're getting some highs from different places and so forth. We have a hello from Singapore and so forth, and people saying that they use the system and so forth, but no real questions from the cross platforms. But I do have one about data, what you're accumulating from data from all of this. When you're in the booking, in the funnel of what the people are engaging with, what kind of data are you able to acquire that would understand who's engaging with the product? Are you pulling data from the sites of the hotels themselves? What kind of levels of data are you getting?
Yeah, so when someone opts into our program in the hotel's booking engine, they're essentially accepting our terms of use and privacy policy. And in that terms of use and privacy policy, it also says, hey, the guest book can market to you, and also the hotel where you're using it can market to you. So we're basically getting the opt-in so the hotel can market that guest. Unlike a lot of the big chain programs, this is a guest that the hotel is going to get their direct booking, of course, with their email address, but they also have the opportunity to market to them. We actually try to minimize the amount of data that we get from the members. We really get their name, their email address, their stay data that they're doing, and then beyond that, we ask them if they want to fill out a profile. We don't like capture it automatically. The main goal is to facilitate the rewards offering that we're trying to give for our hotels to make a better direct booking conversion and fulfill the rewards, but don't try to make this a data play.
Thank you. That is a complete.
How does the redemption piece work? If someone wants to cash out their rewards, how does that work?
So when they enroll, they get a welcome email from the program. It says, hey, confirm your account, by creating a password. And once they've done that, which they can either do immediately and then log into their account, or once their rewards are available, log into their account. But they have, a regular dashboard with their cash balance and a quick click to say, hey, how do you want to redeem this? It's different by country and currency. So the ones that are global are the PayPal and the Visa e-gift card or MasterCard e-gift card, depending on where you are, and Bitcoin. Those are universal from the cash out perspective. And then certain countries like, US has Amazon and Starbucks and all that kind of stuff that you can either get digital card or a mailed gift card, but it just depends on whatever country you're in. Because we have members all around the world.
So with the current situation going on, I would assume most of your revenue is dependent on sustained bookings, and they seem to have taken a hit in the last month or two. So especially in North America, and I know you got places all over the world, but how have you as a company handled the disruption in your business and the revenue and things like that? I'd be interested to hear that.
Yeah, so basically the beauty and curse of our business model is we only make money when the hotels make money. There's no set fees, there's no setup costs. It's all transactional. So of course, our revenues can go down, 85% or 90%, whatever you see the RevPAR, that's pretty much what our revenues are doing right now, depending on where we are in our hotels. I say it's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because the hotels aren't getting a big invoice or invoice at all in some cases. So
you haven't had cancellations, I'm assuming.
Yeah, we have not had cancellations, knock on wood. We sent out when things first hit, we sent out a reminder, hey, just remember, we're in this with you. It's a transactional model. If you have no guests, you have no bill. And that's essentially done the trick. So, we're happy about that. From a company standpoint, we also had everyone take some hits. We didn't lay off anyone. We furloughed a few. We reduced some people's times. And the good news is the way we've financed our company and built our company from day one was organic growth with reinvestment. So profitable model that can be reinvested. Don't get too big, stay small and nimble, and essentially be conservative. And I always question myself in the heyday of VC rounds and everything else going on. Should I be taking money and growing like crazy? And it just didn't feel right to me to do that. And the main reason it didn't feel right was because we want to put our hotels first 100% of the time. We don't want anyone or any outside influence making us make a trade-off that doesn't benefit our hotels. And by and large, now that this has happened, we're in a good place because we don't have crazy expenses. We don't have any debt. We don't have any hurdles to grow into. So we're fine. We're obviously wishing that business would be different, but we're fine, and we're going to come out of this stronger than ever because we've had that philosophy.
Yeah, that's great. And James, you may have answered this at least in part with the answer you just gave, but what's the required commitment from hotels? When somebody signs up as a guest book, partner, what's the term? How does that go?
So the term that we ask for hotels is 90 days, and the only reason we do 90 days is because that usually burns off most of the people who've already booked.
Yep. Yep.
It's the only reason. But if they happen to take us off their booking engine on the first day of the request, that's totally fine. Just pay out those guests at least for 90 days to have reservations.
Yep.
But I was a hotelier. I know what hoteliers like and what they don't like, and what their asset managers like and what they don't like. And so we always made it easy. Hey, no long-term commitment, no upfront fees, no implementation fees. We do that stuff for you for free. It's all transactional, and we built a lightweight model to make it profitable for us to do that.
That's great.
Yeah, one of the things I really liked about you guys when we started chatting, so just full disclosure, Fuel and the guest book have done some collaborative stuff together. We published a downloadable white paper about uncertain marketing through uncertainty. We're trying to coordinate James coming on our podcast, so we have a relationship. Although we actually don't share any clients at this moment, I think that'll probably change in the future. But we're fans of what they're doing, and one of the reasons that we immediately said, okay, these are someone we can work with, is because in the first 30 days of that 90-day period, they actually run the platform as an A/B test. So only 50% of the audience sees any of the messaging from the guest book, and the other 50% doesn't. So they get an immediate baseline on what the uplift is in terms of what impact they're having on conversion rate. So this isn't vanity metrics. This isn't, hey, we stealing attribution from here. It's literal data that's going to tell you how much value they're actually bringing to you. So that was hats off to them.
It almost sounds like you're insinuating that there are people in this industry who steal attribution, and
hashtag attribution theft is real.
Really?
Real, yes.
And I am shocked to hear that such a thing could be going on right now.
Those companies are faring right now. They're certainly not faring as well as the guest book. One of them just laid off 50% of their staff, I believe. So
yeah. Stuart, thank you for those kind words. We don't do attribution at all. It's also mixed blessing. We can only test when we A/B. We can only prove value. So we do it up front, and we say, hey, are you guys good with this? And they can evaluate it, and then it rolls after that. Full time, but we're actually really good with that A/B test. Well, not in this time. A/B testing during this time is a whole other ball game. But usually we can predict in that 30 days exactly what their average billing will be going forward at maturity. So they can see not only how much it's going to cost them, but what their individual results are. Okay. And by the way, Stuart, I have our slides teed up for the right time to just hit on our co-white paper. But yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Wait, you guys are trying to do shameless promotion on this show? I don't know if you know.
That is Tim's realm. That's right.
Right. There's only one person allowed to do shameless promotion on this.
Yeah, and Stuart, thanks a lot for alerting James to the fact that he can now change his business model to attribution. Thanks.
I'm gonna change the attribution and set fee per month.
There you go.
Maybe a set
for the next few months, though.
And a setup fee per key, based on per key and ADR.
And then take the attribution. Every piece of drop that lands on that website is because you were there.
Exactly. 6 month window. We could.
I think you need to go a year to get that full seasonality. Really, don't sell yourself short.
No, that's really great. That's really, really cool, Joe.
Well, no, if there's other slides, I didn't mean to cut you off on the other slides. I didn't even stretch. If there's other slides, especially if it makes Stuart feel good that he's, contribute to a white paper thing. I mean,
Yeah, well, I mean, I was seeing where you guys want to go, and with the rest of the conversation, I'm sure you hit it. And I know I watched last week's episode, and you guys were talking about some of the best practices out there. But we basically co-authored a white paper on how hotels can do the most to prepare for the recovery. Let me just share the little infographic we had here. Hang tight.
Because this is
And
kind of
we
like
pushed this out. Like I think it was right in the middle of March, which is when things are really kicking off in North America. And it's amazing how quickly things change because we were actually working on this back in January before COVID was really the thing that it is today. And it was predicting whether or not there was going to be a downturn, just a generic recession, because a lot of people have been talking about that. And we felt like probably not, but it was, how do you prepare for a downturn and how do you market through it? That was so we already had a lot of the legwork done. So we quickly pivoted when we saw COVID happening. But even so, I mean, there's a lot of great advice in it. But reading back through it now, it's like, wow, things have changed so quickly that some of it's really relevant still, but a few bits in there are like, well, that doesn't quite hit the mark anymore because we're living in this new normal. But it's still very valuable overall.
And Stuart, even if you remember when we were going through the finishing edits, like we actually did a survey, a guest sentiment survey, and I think you guys followed up with a really good one that we saw this morning as part of the prep for this show. But the survey that we did was like outdated a week later. Like we couldn't even use it. So
exactly. We had to pull it out.
We kind of just focused on some of the tried and true things to focus on. The one that I would say is a little bit outdated since we published it a few weeks ago was the resist urge to lower your rates. Obviously, there's going to have to be some discounting going on now, but I think it's still, if you look at it at the high level, the number 2, it's resist the urge to discount too much is probably how we revise that.
Yeah, it's funny because we wrote it with the intent of how do you market through maybe a 20% drop in market, like a normal recession, not a 90% drop in everything. So I don't think anyone could quite have predicted that, but it's still very valuable. We're getting a ton of downloads, a lot of good feedback from it. So
definitely, number 8 was one that I thought was near and dear to my heart. I remember we always had trouble renovating our hotels or refreshing the rooms, and to the extent that you can make payroll and make your your rent payments, that's still a great one to do right now. It's perfect time.
Yeah. For sure.
But anyway,
especially for hotels, if they're able to get the SBA loans to cover payroll, then any money you do have left aside, just putting it into any of that deferred maintenance you've done, any kind of renovation. If you can come out with a stronger product on the other side of this and your competition doesn't, that gives you a huge advantage, a huge foot up.
Yeah, my favorite story, I've told this before on the show, and I couldn't agree with this more. Sorry, my brain broke there for a second. I worked for the leading hotels of the world, and we had our holiday party at the New York Palace right before they closed for a year-long renovation, and we held our holiday party there late December 2008, and it was literally they've said for years after that they weren't smart, they were just the luckiest people in the world because they planned for the renovation and they got to sit out the worst economy the luxury market and frankly the hotel market had seen to that point, and it worked out very much to their advantage. So yeah, if you can do stuff like that, it's a great time to do it.
And you can do if it's just preventive maintenance type stuff, you could probably do it 50% faster than you could otherwise right now. So being able to get in and out of rooms is like a huge luxury.
This is sort of related. We're actually at Fuel. We were planning on renovating some of our office space because we just added team members and we needed to reconfigure because we're in very open plan office and we just needed a few folks in their own confined space because they're on the phone a little more and distracting people. So we've been planning for a while to build some new walls and reconfigure some stuff. So everyone's remote right now. So the last 2 weeks, they've knocked up all these walls and I went in there and looked at it a couple of days ago and they're almost done. No interruption to the staff because we were trying to figure out how we were going to do it and not interrupt staff during the day. And so it was fortuitous for us, but hotels can take that same approach right now. Do floor by floor or whatever you want to do.
So
James,
you'll now be isolated completely from the rest of the Fueligans. Is that?
That's funny. I already had a fancy office because we have to record the podcast. So I needed to close the
Oh,
door.
that's the excuse you're giving.
Keep
Okay.
that quiet. There are actually two new offices that are bigger than mine with 2 windows, and I only have one. And so I can
So
either
you're
be
planning
that
on
guy
moving, are you?
to upgrade, or I can do what Fueligans do and say, someone else gets that one. But yeah,
So, James, do you
definitely
see any model shifting for you coming out of this as different modalities that you can offer or think that you can offer to help spur some of the perpetual growth as we get to the other side of this stuff? Do you see anything that you're changing, or do you just see that this is probably the best model that you have right now?
Well, I think just from a focus standpoint, we're really going to double down on the network effect. So we're doing investments in those types of tools to help us out. One of the things we're working on is a staycation program, things of that nature where we can use our network to the benefit of our hotels.
Good.
That makes sense. Staycation's very smart. I think a lot of folks are looking now at, obviously people are going to be apprehensive of traveling, certainly not flying for a little while and traveling even long distances. So staycations, close by drive markets. I think that's a lot of the strategies we're developing for our clients right now revolve around that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the other thing is, we have the way we have a number of additional tools for hotels to use that we don't promote as much or as hard, but we want to kind of package those up for free. One of them, for instance, is we have an ability to create member rates using the guestbook login and let people log in on your own booking engine without changing your booking engine. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, we'll kind of re-tee up those things of, hey, here's some ways for you guys to get more value from the program coming out of this. And usually we just try and be low touch. We know that the booking engine conversion stuff does its magic, and the other stuff does more magic. But we don't want to push hotels into those things. But I think teeing it up in a nice bundle when they have some time to focus on it will be important.
That's great.
I'm writing notes and answering a couple of people, so by all means continue on. I apologize, James. I forgot to warn you. But if I'm looking in different directions, it's only just to make sure I'm not missing anybody's questions or comments.
No,
on
I got
it.
He's on 173 different platforms. So.
Or is distracted by a squirrel.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
And then there's that also. Yes.
If you meet Lauren in real life, he's still doing the same exact stuff. And I'm hearing voices in my head, and they're asking me questions.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I just want to make sure that I'm answering everyone. I'm not getting any. I'm getting a lot of acknowledgments that they love the product and that people enjoy use it, have used it, or are part of the program. Nobody's asking any really particular questions, and I don't think anybody in our current chat forum has asked either. I threw that up for anyone to see if they said anything. Dean's being abnormally quiet, which means he's also doing something distracting. But usually he's a outspoken questionnaire when it comes to this stuff. So, he can join now. Now we get to see Dean.
Let's bring him on.
Yeah. I pinged him. I don't know whether he's on the channel there. I pinged him in he's in new
There
chat.
he is.
How's everyone?
We're delighted. Good to see
Very
you.
good.
Did you have any questions, Mr. Dean, or did you just want to go over and show your smiling, handsome face?
Oh, a little column A, little column B. No, really, actually, great stuff. And I'm a fan of the direct booking channels and really the importance of this in this time of those in particular. I have watched a number of different news articles that have come out as of late where they're talking about what role will the OTAs play when all of this starts turning around. And I think that is best answered by a question of what should they play versus what will they play. And unfortunately, it's the what will they play is, probably going to play a major role because they're that easy way of putting heads in beds. And it's sad to say that because we've seen this happen before in other downturns in the economy that we all go to the OTAs, right, as our salvation of, hey, here's how I'm going to try to recover because it's easy, because they do all the work for us. But then we spend the next 5-10 years trying to get that business back again. And we're going to go through that same cycle all over again. And what's really sad about that is that right now is really a great opportunity if you've got the tools in place. And I totally recognize that some hotels don't, that budgets don't allow it. Marketing departments have been cut and so on. I totally get that. But if you do have the tools in place, if you do have the resources in place, there is such an opportunity to capitalize on direct bookings right now. It's insane. And a lot of what James has been talking about is a perfect example of that. Even if you're an independent hotel, how do you compete with not just the OTAs, but the brand hotels, as he was talking about with the loyalty programs and things like that? Well, there's just so much opportunity. And the best thing is, and I talked about this last week, the whole world is taking a pit stop right now. So if you're looking at an opportunity to get something running, you can do it right now with such a minimal risk, such a minimal impact on what you're doing, because your business is already down at 10% occupancy.
Right.
Gosh, now's the time to get that set up so that when we are on the curve on the other way, you've got everything ready to go and can be out there ahead of the OTAs. Because boy, you don't think they're doing this right now? You better believe they are.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple articles I think Robert had up with it, but just before we even touch on those ones, just going back to something that on your three options that you had, James, I wonder if the sentiment of us as a humanity, of a community, is going to shift coming out of this, that we might actually consider that third option of charitable donation a little bit more than just the passive, oh, that was a nice token effort, but I really don't really, that people might consider the fact that that is as valuable to them now as whether they got an immediate cash discount or future value discount by the return value kind of thing. I don't know. It's
well, and I think a lot of people would want to feel that way, right? There's definitely more of a togetherness and a we versus a them and us going on. But the reality is also that a lot of people are financially very hurt right now. So
yeah, that's right.
They probably, even if they want to, they're probably in a situation where they have to go with the give me the money, show me the money option.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, go ahead, James, please.
We actually had with the hurricane that devastated the Bahamas, last year, one of our great clients, the Bay Garden Resort in St. Lucia, Sandovnic's a very engaged guy, and he wanted to, they were in St. Lucia, but they said, hey, we want to donate to the Bahamas. We're gonna put some money together, but we actually tee up for the guests of the guest book who stay at our hotel to automatically prompt them, do they want to donate to the Bahamas? And so we made those changes for them quickly, and it was a great program. For sure, more people will do it in a time of need like this.
James, may I introduce Valen Perini with Nor One and Edward St. Ange from Flip.
Hey, Edward, how are you? Good to see you.
Good, how are you?
Good.
Nice to see you. Dean,
Everybody
nice
knows
to see
James
you.
but me. This is the first time I met James. Everybody seems to know James already.
Yeah, James. James is a good guy.
Hey, Tiffany, we went out for drinks last night. Lauren, where have you been?
That's right.
Apparently not out with drinks for you guys.
You know what it is? It's because when James launched Guest Book, he didn't put it up for free on AppSumo. So
Right.
it
Yeah,
completely-
I don't know James very
How
well.
could
Yeah,
Lauren learn about
I don't know much about it.
That's funny.
Hey, but I just want to touch on something Dean said real quick. I think right now hotels have a little time to plan. They have the context of 9/11 and the Great Recession behind them about how damaging it was to just give your business to the OTAs. And the great thing now they have too is like a reset in their baseline, right? Because before it was I can spend a little bit more than I spent last year because of budgets, but if now's the time to just change the game. If you can marshal the resources and make the case, change the game. And by the way, consumers are already a little bit skittish. One of the things the challenges with the OTAs are going to be this whole cancellation issue. Make the most of that. I mean, you can really change the game right now.
Well, I mean, you add that, and again, I did not just point to the articles, but we've been watching the news anyway. Airbnb is in its own paradigm right now, and you have, whether it's solvencybooking.com.
It's paradigm.
Lauren, you got it.
Paradigm. I'm saying paradigm. I'm sorry, it's my word.
It's paradigm.
Anyways,
No, it's a totally different meaning when Lauren
it
uses
does. It's a Lauren
It
meaning.
doesn't matter,
That one.
yeah.
That's a completely Lauren meaning, but
Unrelated to the
it's its
paradigm.
own spiral. How's that? We'll just take the word out of the equation. You have the question of solvency for the OTAs potentially, which I doubt is really going to happen. But just you have the fact that the landscape is going to change, is changing, and when we start stepping back to it, it's going to be progressive. So it's going to be measured. And I'm still a believer in that the OTAs are not going to be against what you're saying, where the people are going to go to the easy fix. I think that the OTAs are going to be a pause before people go to them because they're going to see the strength in possibly trying to do better than they did before and not just run to them. There will be some that do, but I just don't think it's going to be the landslide that it was before. I'm being optimistic probably, but
No, I don't think you're being optimistic, Lauren. I'm not going to make a prediction about this. I'm going to make a statement of purpose. That there are three things that have to happen before hotels get back to normal, right? First, the underlying health issues have to be addressed. Nobody's going to travel while that's the case. The second is that people have to have the finances to travel. And that's going to take a little time to work out because of the economy getting hit the way it is. And then the last one is people have to be reassured. They have to trust that they're going to have a good experience, that they're not, that we're not going to get a recurrence of the health problems, that I'm not going to get screwed on cancellation policy, whatever those things are. And to Dean's point and to your point, that is a huge opportunity for hotels right now. And something like the guest book can help with this. But a lot of things that hotels need to do have to be based around how do you reassure guests that, hey, our cancellation policy can support you and is flexible. Hey, here's other benefits you get from a value add perspective. Hey, if you book directly through us, here are benefits that you receive that you don't get other ways. And if people don't take advantage of this time to set that up for when the recovery happens, then they're going to have no choice but to go to the OTAs, because we know the OTAs are going to hammer that message hard because it's in their best interest to. They have no other option to, right? So,
Well, and if you need to make a change,
must happen.
yeah, but if you want to make a change or cancel it or do something like that, you can probably actually reach the hotel instead of just getting caught in a queue in the OTA.
Well, one thing I'll say to Lauren's point is I think parts of the industry are going to resist OTA. And I think those parts are going to be independent hotels that have other levers they can pull. However, the one rabbit in the hat that I think the OTAs have right now is the brands are going to come out of this weekend. They've already, some brands are doing great, but a lot of brands have already thinned down and furloughed staff heavily, which, is not giving the support that the branded hotels need. And the branded hotels are restricted from communicating with past guests. So they don't have email marketing as a lever to pull. They don't have vanity sites because most of the brands have outlawed vanity sites. So they can't even do a intelligent paid program to build up demand. So I think the brands, believe it or not, are going to be the savior of the OTAs because the OTAs are going to come out swinging on spend and the brands aren't.
No.
The other wild card here is health, right? So if a user goes to Expedia, for example, and they want to ensure that the room is cleaned to a certain standard, is Expedia going to guarantee that? I mean, so that's one of the things that I think is going to change is guests demanding more transparency in how rooms are cleaned. And I don't know if OTAs can want to be in the business of guaranteeing cleanliness, right?
I don't know that the brands want to be.
The brands don't want that.
I'll tell you what, Alan, I'll tell you what the OTAs will do is they'll do a better job communicating the hotels that are doing that than the hotels will.
Oh, yeah.
Because historically, the OTAs have done a better job of presenting a hotel to a consumer and what matters to them than the hotels have done themselves.
But my question is not about presentation. It's as we get into this, I mean, cleanliness now matters. So let's say somebody goes to a hotel, they book through Expedia. Expedia says, yes, this hotel has maintained its cleanliness standard, whatever. And the guest catches COVID-19, right? Even though they cannot prove that they caught it at the hotel room, but then what happens? And so, Ed, you're 100% right. Third parties are way better at, digital marketing in some instances. So, but now I wonder, it's an unknown, right? So Tim's perspective earlier is, what are guests actually, or prospective guests? What are they going to want, and what are they going to expect, and how are they going to want it to be guaranteed?
But quite honestly,
Alan, you've just given me a great point here of. It used to be cleanliness is next to godliness. Going forward is cleanliness is next to RevPAR.
But so one other thing that's tricky about this, guys, and I agree with you, Valen. So don't take what sounds like me disagreeing with you as anything but just devil's advocate.
But General Ed
always sounds like
here's the thing: because of the nature of the issue, you don't know when you caught it. This is the problem with COVID. So, when it reappears, which it will, it's got a 14-day gestation period before you actually start seeing symptoms, if you're going to see symptoms. Right. Well, the problem with that is you don't travel and stay only in the hotel. You are transporting yourself some way or another. You're eating out. some way or the other. There's lots of different ways you could catch it. You're not ever going to be able to nail down
No,
the
no.
point of which you got infected, because it's the nature of COVID itself is you can't pinpoint it to the minute you got it.
Well,
But you're
and-
100%
Yeah, there's
right.
a different direction though. There's a
But we do
different
live in a
direction they can
litigious
take.
society, right?
Sure,
I mean,
right.
this is
100%.
right. So,
Yeah,
so
but they
you're
don't have to
100% right,
guarantee
Ed.
anything, right? They
That
just
doesn't
need a
matter.
checkbox that says this hotel has extra COVID cleaning measures, right?
Right.
Just like they have, it
Right.
provides breakfast or it provides Wi-Fi. It's not a guarantee; it's a reassurance.
Right.
Well,
exactly.
Well,
but
and,
here's the
hey,
thing.
and to that point, the thing that you see the OTAs doing a really good job of, and they've done this for years, is using what is fundamentally a word cloud, but it's presented in different forms, right? But they're mining that data for hotels based upon their reviews and guest feedback and saying, hey, this hotel was very clean, or had great housekeeping. So, and they'll have little word bubbles that you'll see on the site. So that's actually something they have an advantage over Google, because Google largely is basing their content on what you can put in that Google hotel ad off the right hand side of the screen. They don't have a lot of real estate to work with over there. Whereas if I'm on TripAdvisor, I've got real estate now where I can start building in little things like that and give guests that assurance.
They're masters of psychology, the OTA, especially Booking.com. They do a really good job of anticipating every fear, every doubt, and figuring out what is going to nudge people in the right positive direction. And they put it, and it might be a tiny little icon that you don't even pay attention to, but subconsciously it's pulling the right lever.
Well,
So-
and you pay a lot of attention to if you're the person who that what actually is making the decision for you. That's the thing. Not everybody cares about each of those things. They care about the ones they care about. I do want to go back to Ed's point for 1 second, because Ed, I think you make a good point, but it assumes, and I don't know that it is a safe assumption at the moment, that as travel reoccurs, it will reoccur the way it always has. I suspect, people who traveled a lot aren't going to come out of the gate traveling a lot, and people who traveled a little are going to travel less. So, it may be I only stayed at that one place and now I feel sick, as opposed to, those of us who have been road
Sure, but
warriors
even,
for years.
even staying at
I
that
just
one
think that
place,
that's something that's going to take some time, where people are going to say, you know what, boy, and remember, this is perception. Whenever
Right.
we talk
Yeah.
about these things, it's perception. I went on this trip and boy, I stayed in that hotel and I didn't feel like it was clean and now I feel sick.
Right.
Like that's going to be a thing for
Yeah.
sure.
COVID is
would-
going to be the new bed bugs.
That's exactly right.
Well,
That's exactly right.
Exactly
One
right.
thing
So you don't get bed bugs from a restaurant or public transportation or the other things people are going to do.
Yeah.
right, but you get
But you also
COVID.
can't- You
You
can't
get
prove it.
COVID potentially from taking a piece of mail too quickly
Right.
and touching it. And the last person who had that piece of mail
Right.
hours before you sneezed on it.
Right,
I
but
mean,
think about
There's a
this,
cheery thought.
somebody even goes to a hotel and they get sick. I don't know. They catch COVID, not necessarily from the hotel, but maybe from the taxi cab or the piece of mail.
Right.
But they put a review
Yep.
on TripAdvisor, and they say, "I stayed at this hotel. It was really nice, but a week later, I got sick with COVID-19."
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so,
Yep.
I
Is
mean,
that not going to break terms of some of the review sites though? Because they're
Yep.
making an
Maybe.
accusation that they can't
Maybe.
prove. I
yeah.
don't know if we're going to see that.
Yeah,
I think
and
that's
that's
valid
actually,
point.
Stuart, that's a good point. It was what I was about to say is all the hotel has to do is turn around and say, here's everything we did to clean the room.
Mm.
Right.
Also, this person could have picked this up anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the other problem with COVID is not everyone will get symptoms from it.
Right.
So it's not like food poisoning, which you can track back generally to a restaurant, because there'll usually be multiple complaints during the time period that the issues existed. So you'd be able to cluster it and say, this restaurant caused it.
Like the Black Eyed Pea on Rand Road in Arlington Heights, Illinois, back in 1993. I have very fond memories of this, by the way.
I see that.
Yeah, people don't forget. No, but I don't think the litigation would go that direction. I think, and it's been a hesitancy by the hotel associations and the brands and everybody. Because Lauren, when was it, 3 or 4 weeks ago when we did the AHOA webinar? One of the things we were saying was the hotel industry needs to say, here is what we're doing to clean the rooms, right? Because the reality is most of these hotel rooms are a lot cleaner than people's homes, sort of thing. And here are the practices. I think the hesitancy is legitimately, they go, what if someone proves that housekeeper didn't execute that? and then all of a sudden there's going to be some class. They aren't doing what they
But
committed.
again, the biggest
so all of
problem
a sudden they're
everyone's
avoiding it
gonna have-
completely, which is horrible, right?
The biggest problem everyone's going to have with that is even if the housekeeper didn't do that, you'd still have to prove that they didn't get it from the taxi cab.
No,
they didn't get it from the
Oh
rental.
no, I
Hold
don't
on,
think
hold
you're
on,
proving
hold
the
on, hold on.
illness.
From
I
a
think it's the
litigation.
execution of the promise.
Yeah, I want to
right?
jump in
Yeah.
on this for 1 second because I think we're having the wrong debate. You guys are debating
I agree
law.
100%.
You're debating law, and the real problem is going to be perception.
Right.
Yeah,
The real
Right.
problem is going to be trust. The real
Right.
problem is going to be, am I concerned as a traveler that if I travel anywhere
Right.
and end up someplace, I'm going to get sick?
Right.
And that is
Right.
going to be a far bigger problem for the industry than the one-off litigation or the class action suit that comes out against,
Absolutely.
some management company.
Right.
Right.
Mhm.
The problem is people have to feel safe to travel. And
Yep.
until
Yeah.
that
And-
happens, this is going to be a
And
recurring
let's not kid
problem.
ourselves, guys. That's really not going to happen until there are reasonable either therapies or vaccinations for this issue that get it
Right.
better in line
Yeah,
with
think you're right.
standard flu. Because you don't
Right.
hear,
Right.
during a deadly flu season, hotels getting hammered for their
That's right.
cleanliness because the flu was really bad in their city and they didn't do anything. You don't hear that. So there is going to be a section of the world that doesn't travel until that exists.
That's right.
Now,
or
that
or
being
at least
said-
until they feel comfortable that exists.
That being said, there's a high probability that that section of the world are going to be people who are at high risk of having this severely impact them. And then there's going to be everyone else who's going to have different layers of precaution that they're going to take and what
Mhm.
they think creates safety. Now, one of the issues I think is going to exist is for city center hotels. If we talk about anyone who got hammered, like that's going to have some long-term negative effect from this, it's dense city center hotels are going to struggle. I actually think you're going to see, and I have data that I'll share on why I think this, but I think you're going to see nature, outdoorsy, action type properties recover very quickly and continue to have stronger strength than they had before because they're not going to be competing with and I hate to say it because I live here. I think Orlando has a problem. I
yeah.
think Disney and Universal, like any dense meeting place is going to be the areas that take the longest to recover, whereas state parks and the middle of nowhere, the beaches, the mountains, all of those. And the reason I'm saying this is we actually had data up until kind of everything locked down. All of our outdoorsy hotels were actually having stronger weeks.
Yeah.
Like even while this was
Sure.
in like
sure.
straight
Sure,
up
sure,
like
sure.
New Rochelle was on fire and all of this was going on, and yet our Yellowstone hotels, our beach hotels, all of those hotels, yes, they got a slew of cancellations and right behind them replacement bookings, and they were holding strong. And actually I was just talking to a hotel this morning and it blew my mind. They said, yes, we're still open. Their beach is closed. They're still averaging 15 to 25% occupancy every day.
Mhm.
And their beach is closed. And like that blows my mind because you look at Orlando's occupancy, it's of the open hotels. And now Orlando's had over 50,000 rooms close.
Right.
And, so the remaining hotels still are in single digit occupancy at the highest level. But I will tell you, like every other business that we've had, like Myrtle Beach was soft, not super soft. We were tracking their bookings up until like things really locked down. They were still ahead of 2018, and we're just slightly behind 2019. And it was actually a couple of big properties that were dragging that market down. There were actually half of the properties we were tracking were ahead of their 2019 March business until it really came to, hey, severe, states locking down and then ultimately Myrtle Beach closing their hotels.
If I could pause for just a second, because James, this is probably the biggest form of compliment that all of you can give you, is that you have to have sharp elbows. Normally, everyone's nice to new guest co-hosts that we pause anytime we think you're going to say something, and you've been trying to get a word in edgewise for 10 minutes.
You got to elbow in.
So, sharp elbow room where you just have to go over and say, stop. And let me also have to introduce Ms. Lula.
There was a point, I was going to let it slide, but Valen had originally said that, potentially hotels get an advantage because of research, people researching this cleanliness issue versus OTAs, right? Hotels get an advantage versus OTAs. And I just want to mention that billboard effect, which we all love, that is going to be in play because everyone's going to research their trips so much more than they did in the past.
Yeah.
And they're going to hit the hotel site at some point, right? So whereas they might have just been, I just want to click the fastest button on the app before, that's not the case now. So it's a net opportunity in my mind.
Yeah.
And I think also, just going back to a couple of different points, there's one of those sharp elbows for you, James. So going back to a couple of points, and glad I was finally able to join here, because I really think that there's some important points here. There's a lot of hotels out there that are saying that they're doing cleanliness, and there's a lot of hotels out there that aren't saying that they're doing cleanliness. There's a lot of back and forth. I think really the happy medium, because this is the case with most marketing, is you need to position yourself as the expert. So don't worry as much. Maybe you should have something about what your cleaning policies are for sure. And then of course, take any downtime that you have right now to do extensive training if you haven't laid off all of your housekeepers, and walk them through, make them do a deep clean of the entire hotel right now so they get a lot of practice, and make it clear that it's a terminable offense to find out that you're not using certain, sanitation methods. But why not put out literally a video of your best housekeeper or your housekeeping supervisor or something like that saying, hey, we wanted to share some best practices for how you can clean and disinfect your home. And we're going to use one of our hotel rooms to show you, because then it's not as on the nose, right? Because you're just showing that you know exactly what to do. You have people following it. Maybe you even come up with some sort of hotel logoed cleaning kit that they can order or something like that from you.
I love that idea.
That's a great idea.
Really, now is the time to think outside the box. We have this, as much as this sucks, this is a golden opportunity for all of us to take a step back and say, okay, traditional methods did not keep us from a disaster like this. Let's take our extra time. Let's move the industry that next leap forward and focus on how we can be more inspirational and less, hey, here's another 20% off offer. Come stay with us.
And Lily, brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. It reminds me so much. Ed, we'll arm wrestle. No, all I was gonna say was it reminds me a ton of the Heavenly Bed, right? And I'll never forget hearing Barry Sternlicht talking about it one time, saying, how hard was it for us as an industry to remember the fact that people actually care where they sleep?
Right.
This was the brilliant innovation that we came up with, was a comfortable bed. It should not be a brilliant innovation that we come up with, I don't know, a clean room. But it is brilliant to hear you say that, because nobody's doing it. It's a spectacular idea. Really.
So here's going to be the fine line, and you reminded me of something I wanted to bring up a few minutes ago. Was is this issue going to supersede the environmental issues that all the hotels have been obsessed with? Yeah, so hotels have been putting in pump soap in the shower so it gets less plastic. Yep. They've been doing the cleaned glasses wrapped in plastic instead of the plastic cups. Do we see a massive step back in that because safety supersedes?
For a while, yes.
Yeah, I agree with Tim. I think it'll be sort of backwards and then forwards. So, but I think those are great points, Ed, because I hadn't really thought about it. I would hate for us to backslide where we were 5 years ago, but maybe, it may be that in the short term, people care more about not getting COVID than, keeping plastic out of the oceans, right? Which is reasonable in the short term.
Right.
Yeah. If people are going to be more concerned about what's going to kill me now versus what's going to kill me 10 years from now, rightly or wrongly, right?
Yeah.
There's another factor to that, though, because I think we're going to start seeing the media's narrative shifting towards what used to be global warming, but now it's this environmental data that's available, because we've gone through this unprecedented time in human history where we literally stopped a lot of things we were doing that were harming the earth potentially. And there's going to be a lot of narrative focused on that.
Yeah, have you seen the study on LA's air quality?
Yeah.
LA
Right.
now
New
has
Delhi's air quality. They're like,
LA
the sky is blue.
Yeah.
We're going
Who
to see a
knew?
lot more narrative on that. And I think a lot of people that were kind of on the fence of, is it really us? Do I really care? Are going to wake up and say, okay, this is a real problem we're really creating. We need to be more mindful moving forward. So I think that's going to play a little part. I agree with you. I think it's going to be a slow push back, but then a fast rebound towards.
Well, and it's
eco-friendly stuff.
it is a great opportunity. So I don't talk about this very often on the show because it's not related to hospitality, but I started my career in digital working for Charles Schwab during the dot-com boom. And Chuck Schwab himself always used to talk about the power of and, right? These things are not either or. You got to think about the Venn diagram and say, okay, what is the this and this? How do we make sure you are safe, but also environmentally sensitive? How do we make sure we do all of these things? And it doesn't mean that the Venn diagram is a circle where they're all perfect, but it's finding those overlaps. That's where some of I think the really interesting innovations are going to come in. If people will say, we have to check multiple boxes, we have to walk and chew gum at the same time. Right?
That's very easy in many cases, I think, because honestly, like hot water and soap kills this virus. Like, it's not that hard, people. So I think that, hopefully we don't go back to single serve, because really if you just follow a standard and thorough cleaning procedure, I think that is, I know that when I next go to a hotel, I'm going to be looking at all the nooks and crannies, because in my mind, if you had this much time on your hands while you were closed, your hotel better be spotless when I come back. I better not find lids in the little
staffing,
switches.
I mean, that's I think the challenge for I talked to a couple of our hotels this week, and they're down to 9, 8 people on staff total,
right,
start to finish. So how much? I mean, they don't have any housekeepers. The 9 people are all, senior salaried and senior hourly, right? So they don't have time.
But guess what? The GM is now a housekeeper. The GM is now the front desk person.
Well, should be doing
the
housekeeper. So.
But here's the thing. I think that I heard you doing some shameless promotion earlier, so I'm just gonna jump right on that bandwagon and say that in my first podcast episode, which you can find online now, talks about whether to
They're
close
learning,
your
Tim.
hotel.
They're learning.
I'm great at shameless promotion. Don't worry, I'm all over that. So in whether to close your hotel, it talks about your cash reserves and different things that you would need. But if you can afford to have 2 or 3 housekeepers, let's be honest, they're probably making minimum wage. They aren't that expensive. If you can bring on a few of your top people and select them based on past performance to assist with that, I think that we're being short-sighted, just like, when you have money, but you cut people at the front desk and you have a line of 25 people to check in all the time and your review scores tank and it affects your pricing. Like, all of this is cyclical. So now there are hotels that literally have no money whatsoever. I get that. You just have to try and survive with what you have. But if you have leeway for 2 or 3 minimum wage employees, have them on staff and have them help you with these projects. Or if you don't have enough projects for them, you get through all of the deep cleaning and you're just basically waiting to dust at the end. Think about, how can we create maybe masks? Fabric masks are like a huge industry right now. Maybe you send out a care package to your guests that includes a small bottle of hand sanitizer, assuming you have a place to get it, or leftover soap or something, and a face mask.
Roll.
A toilet paper roll. Really look at what you have to work with and find unique ways to work with your guests. So I would say have a logoed face mask, but I think creating logoed fabric on short order might be a little bit difficult. But if you have anything like that, exactly. If you have something like that at your disposal, go for it. But housekeepers are also often, talented in tailoring or sewing or something like that. And sometimes you'll find other people. I mean, every other person in the world owns a sewing machine right now. And I know this because I am also in the fabrics department at Walmart right now, just to help bring on extra money for us to pay our team during the furlough. So I'm learning a lot about this. But all of these supplies are in short demand. So it's these little things that guests will look at and say, wow, I never would have expected to get a XYZ hotel care package. So really finding
And I think you're touching on something really important, and I think it's the distinction between the hotels that are going to fare really well through this and the ones that are going to struggle and maybe not survive, and that is thinking long term. So short term, people are like, I don't want to spend money right now. But if they're thinking long term, spending some money on some folks that are minimum wage to deep clean and create an almost brand new property when you come out of this is going to allow you to make more money. It is going to increase your review scores. It is going to increase the guest loyalty. And you're gonna reap the return on that tenfold. So a lot of people are making the same mistake in marketing, in sales, in every department where they're just arbitrarily cutting. And Ed, you were on the conversation with me last week when someone said they almost let go of their sales staff and they decided to wait one more week and they made 7 wedding bookings that next week because all of their competition has got rid of all of their sales staff. So the people that are looking for weddings, you have a really good shot at getting their business right now because no one's calling them back. So
being present to win right
term,
now.
Yeah,
Exactly. Because more importantly, all 7 of the weddings were in year. They were in this year.
Right.
So, that's pretty
And they
big.
probably have easy,
Like
cancellation
if you
terms,
stop
right?
marketing, you're going to lose the opportunity for the people that do need to travel. And Lauren was on our podcast this week, and shameless plug number 3. Lauren was on our podcast this week, and he talked about he's got properties that are doing better than they did last year because they're targeting people that are traveling and they're still spending money to go after them. So, don't look at the short-term benefit of cutting costs if it's going to cost you more in the long term.
So I'm going to do.
And I've got a question for James because of the deep operations background, obviously. So you're back in your GM days, if you got thrown into this situation, who are the folks that you wind up keeping in your hotel if you have to limit it down to 7?
Well, I don't think it's. I think while there's huge uncertainty, you cut back as much as you need to make sure you're financially viable. But then you just really look for when's that booking pace start picking back up, and you put together. It's almost like a little mini pre-opening budget, right? And you bring those people back 2, 3, 4 weeks before you see people returning, and you can accomplish a lot of this stuff, and not have to go back and touch it. So I think that the initial cut back in the places you have to cut back to be financially viable is very important, and then just wait until you have some good news.
Yeah, and listen, don't forget the most important thing is the amount of lead time it takes to light your hotel back up. You need to be watching for signs because if you wait until the very last minute or if you're late to reopening, your cost of customer acquisition is going to be off the charts for a long period of time. Because I was actually thinking of something Stuart said. So Google is doing this program where they're giving grants to their advertisers based on how much they've spent over the last couple of years.
Yep.
So how much do you think Expedia and Booking.com are getting?
Yeah.
Well, they're about 20% of their ad revenue.
So
That's a good point, Ed.
If it follows to your level of spend, that means they're getting 20% of $800 million because that's how much Google's putting out there.
Right.
Yeah, and the problem with turning everything off is now you cannot see any of those indicators.
Right.
So we're all looking for what are the indicators that the market is coming back. But guess what? If you've set everything off, you have no idea.
That's exactly right. Since we're doing the shameless promotion portion of the program, I put a link in the chat to my column this week in Hotel News Now about in difficult times, digital must do the heavy lifting. It is a place where you can continue to keep the lights on, where you can continue to communicate these messages, where you can do it relatively cost effectively, where you will get data about when you see search volumes going up for your market or your property or things along those lines. And you can be damned sure the OTAs are investing in that at when the time is right. And if you wait too long, as Ed rightly says, you're screwed. Right, you're in a really bad position. I actually want to ask. I want to ask James a question though. James, since we're talking about planning ahead and the like, you started to talk about the network effect of what loyalty can do for the independent properties and the like in a case like the guest book. Can you just talk a little bit about where people can take advantage of that, or how that would work, or where you see that working as things start to move towards recovery?
Yeah, I'll hit that question, but one thing that I want to touch on real quick is when you have to think about what are the goals going to be for these general managers and director of sales. How are they going to be looked back upon in 2020 for their performance? And the answer is their market share change when things came back. So if that's your number one goal and way you're being viewed, you need to be investing in market share right now. So if you're Hawaii, it's summer, it's fall, it's holiday season, you need to be really hitting that hard, because you're going to be a hero if you do it right. And if you snooze, you're going to be they're going to forget about all the other stuff that happened. They're going to say, how'd you come back with market share? And so just keep that in mind as a hotel, is how you're personally going to be.
Brilliant point. Brilliant point.
Yep. But on to the network effect. I mentioned one of the ideas. So by and large, I'll give you a little bit of color for this strategy. We've always had this rule with our hotels, and most loyalty programs. Okay, I'll give you an example. When I was at W Westwood and we had W Hollywood, 8 miles to the east, SPG would come to us in February and say, "Hey, do you guys want to do double points to get more market share?" And I'd say, and by the way, Hollywood's doing it, and I'd say, "Well, I guess I'm in it too," because it was competing against each other, right? We didn't,
right.
And everyone just ended up paying more. Sure, maybe we got a little share from Hilton overall, but mostly everyone just paid more. So we just have this golden rule: is don't do anything that would help someone else to your disadvantage, right? It's kind of the golden rule: never do anything that will hurt even one hotel. So we haven't ever marketed our hotels to our database other than like a destination focus. But we see this opportunity with staycation, which I touched on before, of, hey, let's find out where everyone actually lives, and let's let them sign up for texting service. They can only get the deals for one market where they live. And by the way, you probably joined our program in another city. Like, maybe I joined it at the Lotte New York Palace when I stayed there, but I live in LA. There's no way that letting the LA hotels market to me staycation deals, that the Lotte New York Palace is going to get the short end of the stick for bringing that person to the network. And so it's that type of thinking of, hey, how can we help all of our hotels with additional marketing channels for free? Have a great deal, text it out to our database of people that are in the local market. That's one example of the network. We have all these members that have opted into marketing for our hotels. We have great hotels. How do we get the message out in a way that's a fair playing field?
Great.
And going back to a conversation with Ed that we had earlier when it came to some of the hotels as to this preparation and planning of things that they're not doing. We were talking about the fact that your dialogue right now, to emphasize what you just said, James, is critical. I mean, we're talking to a group of hotel people that, they were literally waiting for the signs. There's tools out there that you can watch and monitor engagements and curiosities and trends. I mean, something as simple as Google Trends is historical, but you can actually set up monitoring to see as people begin to engage in dialogue and begin to search for and search queries and so forth. You can model yourself up, because I was referring to it monitoring, because that's a blind spot for a lot of people right now. You're right. We're not sitting at our desk. We're not looking, and star reports are useless. They're all about historical non-usabilities. So there's no forward-looking aspect to what those traditional pieces of data are showing for. So you have to literally create your own modeling for monitoring. And right now, everybody's being thrown out the door. Most places are throwing them out the door, and they're not leaving themselves the very resource that they need to know when is that light at the end of the tunnel, or where is that point where we need to start considering ourselves that we have to prep for. So, yeah. Dean, looks like you have something to say. Let me have a look.
Can I give a tip that I think everyone should take advantage of? And I haven't seen any hotels, even my clients, that are taking advantage of it. And this is kind of segueing into the top story a little bit, but we don't need to talk about that. We collected a consumer database over the last 10 years, and we survey different things to every now and again. We'll do consumer sentiment studies. Typically, when we do that, the database hasn't really grown a ton, but when we do that, we usually incentivize and say you provide answers to a survey, you're entered for a chance to win a gift card or something like that. We usually incentivize it. We sent out a survey last week, Thursday of last week, with no incentive, and just said, we want to know your feelings about COVID-19 and the current situation. typically when we've done the survey to this database in the past, we maybe get 2,000 responses, maybe, if we're lucky. We got over 10,000 responses within 24 hours to this survey because people are willing to share how they're feeling right now. They have more time to fill out these surveys and they're passionate about it. So it really was an eye-opener to me, and I'm talking to a lot of clients about go survey your guest database right now. You can do it for free. You've probably already got an email platform you're paying for. Go set up some Google surveys, or if you want to pay for a product like Survey Gizmo and do a little more sophisticated, you can. But go and benchmark where people are. What is their sentiment right now? And then do that every 2 or 3 weeks. And you'll start to see when the turn happens, not on a global level based on data from China, but when is your guest history, when are they starting to turn the corner? It's going to cost you nothing. It takes very little effort. In that intel you can get from that, the insight could give you the leg up on your competition because they're probably not going to be doing it.
It's great advice. And, you know, if I can ask, since we're coming up on the top of the hour, you know, we're going for almost 90 minutes. I would love to ask if we can actually make this week's top story next week's top story too, because I think that survey and some of the results
There is no inventory carryover, Tim. That is a rule.
It's like selling hotel rooms, what you're telling
That's
me.
right.
I think Stuart was going to do an update on it again anyway. You're going to re-roll that.
Yeah, we're gonna push that survey out every 2 weeks. So the next one will go out next Thursday. So we may could move that to Wednesday and have data ready for the show. A preview of the data for the show.
James, go ahead, dude. I'm sorry.
I was sorry, James. You go, and then I will.
No. I was going to say. Go ahead, Alan. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying that was a great idea for Stuart. That's all. I mean, that 2 week survey, I love it.
So Stuart, I read all the way through, and you said that you didn't collect demographic information from the respondents, but like, do you have a feel for like age generally?
Yeah. So that we've had a lot of feedback about that. So we're going to add demographic questions to the next one. So we'll get a feel
at the end. Yeah.
You know, when we surveyed this database before, it definitely is. I mean, everyone on it has indicated in the past that they are travelers, that they're vacation leisure travelers. Right? That's the demographic that we actually hit. So, you know, it probably skews a little more female, and it skews probably late 20s to 50 in terms of age range. And it's all North America, primarily US based, but there's some Canada in there as well.
Mostly East Coast, though,
I was
right?
more interested in is
It does skew some East Coast, so you know how we got a lot of the database over the years. You know, we used to manage a ton of city.com, so it was that consumers in various cities. So there's some from like, you know, we had Portland, we had actually Honolulu.com, but a lot of the cities that we had were from the East Coast, so like Savannah and Charleston and Myrtle Beach and places like that. So the data does skew a little bit to the East Coast, but if you, in terms of the portals that we collected it from, but if you look at the density of where the people live, probably a little heavier East Coast, but it does represent the full U.S.
And with 10,000 respondents, you're probably starting to get into a little bit of law of large numbers territory anyway. That you're certainly going to it's certainly going to be directionally accurate, if not. You know.
For sure.
To point to the same conversation to it is that I was very impressed with American Airlines, to be honest with you, that they're pointing out points for opinion. They're offering reward programs for you to participate in their survey program. So literally to answer your own question, you can start answering your own people. What is it you're interested in? When are you interested in? What are you interested in doing? You know, just keep the dialogue going, and then rewarding them with funny money, so to speak. You know, where you can give future reward value. Just saying, next time you're back, I'm buying you $50 worth, whatever you want. You know, when you come into the hotel or whatever. And with that, and again, reiterating, Google Surveys is a completely underutilized tool. It is a very powerful, very cheap tool. I mean, I did a massive, not for this reason. I did one a while back, $75, and I had over tens of thousands of people. I was just literally asking about travel patterns that people were trying to do about going to Miami. And it was just one of those things that you could build a really cool survey to and stuff. But out of deference to James, I mean, James, is there anything we missed about what you wanted to talk about before we even touch on any of the articles that Robert threw in there? Because there is this mediocre top story. I don't even know why I got picked as a top story. I don't mean the credibility of questionable, but
Well, no. the Rock Cheetah Hospitality Update available at bit.ly/Rock Cheetah for seamless self-promotion.
See, James, we told you there's no worry about the promotional aspect.
We started this pay for placement type thing, which was really it worked out great the first week. So yeah.
That's funny.
So
And it
James,
only costs us a beer next time I see Robert. So
conversation.
That's right.
I want to slide into the top story so we can talk a little bit more about the numbers that Stuart was so generous in sharing.
Yeah, I thank you very much. I've really enjoyed the conversation, the opportunity. So please move on.
Okay.
And by the way, I'm coming up on the top of the hour. I must depart. It is always a pleasure to see you all. But unfortunately, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately. Fortunately, I have a client I got to talk to at 1 o'clock. So,
well, Tim, before you go, where they can find you so that we unabashed.
I can be found at rockcheetah.com. No, you can find me at timpeter.com. The Twitter handle is at tcpeter. Looking forward to the continuing discussion. And I'm dying to have some conversation with Stuart about the numbers, but that'll have to wait for another show or another pass. James, lovely to meet you. Thanks so much for some great information and great insights. Hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe, stay well, and
thank you, Tim. You stay safe and healthy. Say hi to the family.
All right, take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye. I know. So, Mr. Stewart, since it's your headline show there, tell us some things that you thought about it.
Well, so for those of you that are watching and haven't seen it, we fielded a study to a little over 10,000 North American travelers responded and asked them a bunch of questions. I think some of the jarring results were, the first question on the article is, what's the one word you associate with travel right now? And we did a word cloud based on the density of responses. And I think there was one positive word on there, which was hopeful, but everything else was negative. It was scary, scared, fearful, not happening, stay at home. Like, it was just you could tell people do not want to think about travel right now. So that kind of sets the tone. We kind of wish we had done that question prior to this happening to have a benchmark. So we're actually going to ask a couple of variants of that question next time we field it. One will be, how did you feel about, what was the one word you associate with travel prior to COVID-19? And then we're going to ask another one that's more forward thinking. So thanks to Ed's suggestion. But that was really interesting, and it tells you that where people's focus are. I think the other one that we're getting a lot of attention for, the data point that we asked was, the government is sending out these stimulus checks eventually at some point that every American adult is going to get. And they're substantial, right? I think they're $1,400 for an individual making less than $75K, and they're like $3,400, something like that for a couple. And you get bonuses for kids and things. So it's a substantial amount of money. So we said, how do you intend to use this money? And there were 4 or 5 options. Most people are using it to pay bills, the vast majority. The next up was, putting into savings or paying credit card debt or buying essentials. And right at the bottom of the list, it was less than 10% said travel. So anyone that's kind of hypothesizing that people are going to have the money to travel because of the stimulus check, that's probably not what the data is telling us at this point.
No, and
So
it's,
those were
it's
two
like
highlights,
90
but I'd be
days after.
interested in seeing-
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's other
And
research that said that it's not going to be, people will be willing to travel 90 days after the stimulus check. Yeah. So it's not like they're
Yeah.
going to be saving that for that period of time. So.
Correct. Yeah. So I'm interested in hearing if there's any other standout data points or any other insights you guys had from the data. So the way we structured it was each question we just put out what the raw answer was, gave a little commentary on it, kind of looked at what the opportunity is because of that data point, because there are a lot of opportunity, even though it's a lot of very fearful and dark results from this, there are opportunities that come from almost every one of them. And then we put in some resources too for folks that are looking to take that opportunity to the next level. So, but yeah, I throw it back to everyone to see if there's any information that you guys found interesting or surprising.
So I was thinking about, type of travel, right? So, and maybe you have that in here. No, you don't. So like flying, driving, taking a train, that kind of stuff, which sort of the flying part ties into one of the other articles that Robert posted. But what does travel mean, right? When somebody says I'm thinking about travel, what does that encompass? And I would be fascinated by how people are thinking about travel now.
I would also add the length of time they want to stay away. I think there's a penned up from the perspective of getting out, that if they're going to make this trip, that they're going to make it stay in one location for a length of time. Because I think, me personally, I think controlling a singular environment for a while, if I go to a hotel and stay for a number of days, I'll feel a lot more comfortable rather than hopping between locations and going through a variety of places where I might want to go to a place and stay for a length of time and enjoy being there. So more destination based might be a length of stay of what if they do get to travel, perhaps.
Or type of accommodation, right? So I was listening to some other webinar this morning, and they were talking about if a guest would be more comfortable staying in something like an Airbnb, right, where they can control the whole environment. Let's just say it's a standalone apartment or a house. And this goes back to the cleanliness and sort of controlling your environment versus staying in a hotel where, there's been people in that room before you, but if it's a hotel that says, maybe they do what Lily suggests, which is they put out a video about how they clean the rooms, and you don't know that about, let's just say, an Airbnb, because
right.
They don't have any visibility into how that host cleans that space. So also those types of accommodations, like would I be more willing to stay in a hotel versus a standalone apartment or something like that?
We were recently talking with our Google rep about that same thing, and Google is saying that they think vacation rentals will come back before hotel rooms do, or at a faster pace than they do.
Yeah.
But I would put one more thing into that equation, and that would be, and I've got a son who's a Boy Scout, so this would be very telling, but what about your RV resort communities? Sun RV communities, for example, where I can go there, bring my own, and that would so I'm still kind of pseudo social distancing, but I can get the hell out of my house.
You beat me to it, Dean. I think that if we only focus on Airbnb versus hotel, I think that we're being short-sighted at this point. I think that the RV business is booming right now. More people own their own RV than ever before, and guess what? That's an environment that you can control. You don't have to worry about what the cleanliness is. You can travel without having to worry about how somebody else is cleaning somewhere that you're staying. And I think we are going to see an explosion of RV travel when travel begins to be allowed, because that's going to be a huge opportunity, that whole industry. So even if you've got any spaces, like if you're a hotel that is more in an open space, and you can even add RV parking spots, like that's something you should probably consider trying to install right now.
And there's another component that's going to even exacerbate that more, and that is that almost every child in this country is learning to study remotely right now and study from home, and parents are getting experience with that. So that's always been kind of one of the, especially the folks that want to take longer trips and go travel around the country and for 6 months, things like that, which was becoming more of a trend. But there was always that apprehension about pulling kids out of school and how they're going to educate. Everyone just got a crash course on that. So I think that's going to accelerate people's demand for it.
On a side note, I did say that I think that after this is all over, teachers could demand that their salary is double.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think people's pay is going to go up.
Does anybody remember that game show, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? They really need to get that back right now. There's a whole bunch of parents that are suddenly realizing that I'm not.
Just from another, just not necessarily a hospitality perspective of it, we don't even know the ramifications of all of what this is going to do to our society. We now realize that we don't need to keep building more and more offices. We don't need to keep building bigger and bigger schools. We can in ways, especially if this is a worry about how close in proximity lingers longer, that people realize that maybe we need to have half the people go to the building one day and the other half go the next or whatever, or that there is no need for some people, like you just pointed out, that school can go on the road, work can go on the road, or that there's no need to go over and have this density thing of as much anymore, that we can be still separate and yet still go over and have a more normalized life, but we don't have to be as dense about it anymore.
Well, listen, the school thing, don't forget, a lot of the school thing is the childcare aspect of it. Where both parents work, having their kids be able to be somewhere doing something constructive where they're being watched by semi-vetted adults. Is
Depending on the school
that
district.
need isn't going to go away. And so, I mean, I don't think we're going to see a huge amount of change as that goes, because quite honestly, in most parents' case, having to educate their kids while also being employed has created some substantial challenges.
True. I'm not disagreeing with that. But,
Plus the social aspect of.
but we're a
having kids.
benchmark society. Well, at least I would say domestically for the United States, we're a benchmark society. The benchmark has been changed. So no longer can the school say, I'm sorry, you can't take little Timmy out of school for 3 months while you go hiatus around on an RV just because you working economically can do that. Now they're going to say, wait a minute, remember back when this happened? Yes, I can, because you have now remote broadcasting from the class. Little Timmy can go over and watch the class.
But they don't. I mean,
But
I think
that's really different programming.
Yeah, and also understand the amount of stress this has put on the educators to adjust to being able to deliver education this way. First of all, it's not being done to where it's permanent. They didn't set this up in the classrooms. These educators are doing these things from home.
Right.
So, I mean, well, I think you may see some slight adjustments in education from this, some improvements from it. I don't think this is going to create the shift. The paradigm shift.
Thank you.
Would say, Lauren, that you're saying,
Right.
and
I
it's
there is two ways
now.
of saying
That
I
being
looked it up.
said, I do think your comment about work is accurate. I think there are a lot of companies that could have been remote workforce, but because of management's lack of confidence that they could handle that well, has held a lot of positions that should have always been remote. It'll allow some of that to happen, and I think that will be some level of change. But I mean,
Let me ask a question then. Do you think this helped WeWork or killed WeWork?
Oh, well, WeWork was
Nothing was
dead
gonna help
before
WeWork.
that.
Yeah.
And SoftBank just pulled their funding.
The concept. the
SoftBank
concept.
just pulled their funding. They're getting sued by WeWork.
Yeah,
So,
but
yeah,
the
WeWork's
concept of
toast.
saying rather than having to constantly build brick and mortar, cubicles, walls, rooms, so forth, let's just have people work from home, and then when they're going stir crazy at home, they get rented space and go someplace to work. The concept of not having to create, Acme building 55 floors of same people.
Again, I think
a lot
you're
of
going to see
hotels
movement.
doing this. Yeah, I see a lot of hotels doing this right now successfully, actually, where they're offering a discounted day use rate to just get the heck out of Dodge and
Red
have
Roof.
somewhere where
Red
they
Roof
can
is doing
focus.
the under our roof.
Red Roof is doing it. Hacienda del Sol, one of our clients in Tucson, is doing it. There's a lot of different hotels that are doing it very successfully because I think there was a Best Western in Utah that I saw doing it because people just need somewhere to focus and their homes are not necessarily set up for work from home. So I think that we will see more work from home. I mean, even Gary Vaynerchuk posted something about a week ago where he said, I always said I would never allow my people to work from home, but now that we have to, it turns out I kind of like doing it, and I found out I'm more productive and not less. So
I think the WeWork thing, though, is as someone who's been working from home for 10 years now. I mean, I joined a small office co-share space in a town a couple of miles away, just for the social aspect of it. What hotels are offering right now is it's in a room, right? So there is no social aspect. Maybe you're going to get away from, the kids and everything. Right. For me, I used to co-work just because I wanted to be around people and I needed to get out of my house, especially on Mondays. So I think what might be interesting for hotels coming back is less about renting the rooms out, but more about renting out hot desks in the lobby. Like if you think about some of these Radisson Reds or a Loft, these types of they're sort of up there, they're mid-scale, but with a lot of focus on public space. I could see them adding hot desks into their revenue mix, where instead of taking a room out of inventory, you just get a desk. You get a desk in the lobby with Wi-Fi and power, and it would add to the vibe of those types of brands that are trying to build a social situation in their lobbies.
Sure.
But still, with COVID, social situations in lobbies, I don't know. You keep people 6 feet away, but then it's all,
Yeah, it might just be the density thing again, but small little meeting rooms where you can share together, where you can be in the same room without it being crowded, I guess, and then facilities for food and beverage be brought in, some mild catering, some breakouts.
Right.
There'll be probably a slow growth, and from you look at it that what Microsoft went over and shut down, they're having no conference through 2021. No gathering, and everything. Everything's going to be for them online now, and that's kind of worrisome because conference is probably one of the last things that come back from any of this. And in what form will it come back? Even in that sense, will they be as big or as dense as they were before, even, or will they be more intimate and always simulcasted or what have you? I mean, that's changed an awful lot too. These big conference centers and stuff. Conventions.
Trade
shows.
The big trade, all the giant trade shows. I'm going back to WeWork though. I mean, WeWork had the worst business model for this though, because they were taking these long-term real estate leases and then basically kind of subbing it out and building up a bunch of capital in it too, right? So this is the absolute worst for that. But yeah, I think commercial mortgage-backed securities just going to be really, really roughly hit, where people start going, wait, we're short of cash. What do? Let's not pay for that big fancy office, right? Let's keep them distributed till we can build a
Yeah, I had a question about, because you're bringing up conferences and trade shows, and this is something we're kind of pondering right now internally. So I'd be interested in getting everyone's opinion. But high tech obviously is probably considered by most the biggest trade show in the hospitality industry, at least technology trade show in the industry. And they obviously moved from June to October, staying in San Antonio this year. Are you guys, what do you think is going to happen with that? Because on the one side, we feel like, people aren't going to be ready to travel by then, and certainly aren't going to have money to spend. The hotels aren't going to have money to spend on things. But on the other, we feel like people are going to be ready to look for new opportunities to save money. They may, so we don't know what our strategy is with high tech this year, but I'd be interested to know, are you guys planning on attending? I know Rock is going on at the same time, but what are your thoughts in terms of high tech this year?
We're sponsoring it, Rock. We currently are planning to be there. It's just such an unknown, though, isn't it? I mean, this even ties up into one of the articles Robert posted around the 7 stages, which is mostly airline specific, which makes it really interesting.
Yeah.
But part of conferences in general is going to tie into air travel, right? And so how are airlines going to deal with individuals? Are they going to require that we all get tested before we get on an airplane? Because no airplane wants to be like a cruise ship, right? Where they get turned away from their destination because it has become known that somebody on the plane is infected and they won't let them land and blah blah. So I think before we can even talk about conference and intercontinental travel, how are we going to manage the flights? That's a big unknown for me.
The one of the articles actually that Robert you put in there, one of the 7 steps of the new normal, and there he addresses the airlines.
And I apologize to Tim that Tim's article was going to be in there, but I decided to throw in a different Timothy O'Neill. Instead, no, because I thought it was a great article that hit a lot of interesting issues. So.
Yeah, but to your point, the article, if I can just surmise a couple of things I got out of it from the aspect of the airlines, was that some airlines aren't going to come out of this, some of the smaller carriers aren't going to come out of this, that there's going to be this new rebound of collaboration where the government might have to step in and actually push the hand of the airlines to share routes, force routes to be opened, that carriers will have to intertwine which carrier carries that route and can interchange with, and that there was this aspect of with this instant testing that will eventually come out of this. I mean, they're already down to a 5-minute test on some of these things that they're trialing. You're right. There will be an inspection on and off of those things so that it can be controlled if there's anything that happens from that, and that they have to rethink the densities that they're carrying, that they might have to offer variations as to what carriers carry how many people at for what times.
Yeah, Delta's already doing that.
Yeah,
Delta's already saying the middle seat is always empty, which doesn't. So you're basically 24 inches away from anybody. That's not 2 meters, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
So the question, so they're trying to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they're struggling through that for sure. And they, like I said, this guy was just proposing what he thinks would be, and that was scary that he was talking about that being in June of next year.
Yeah.
You know, that those things, conversations were going on. He wasn't talking about it being anywhere in this year or even in the early part of next year. He was saying that was James, thank you again so much for being here. You are, of course, always welcome to come join us whenever you would like. We'd always keep you informed. We appreciate the time. If people want to know more about the guest book, where is it they can find the information? Sorry.
Hoteliers.theguestbook.com or theguestbook.com/hoteliers.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your time today. Sincerely appreciate the insights.
Thanks, James.
Bye.
Appreciate it.
Oh, just close the tab. There you go. Perfect.
Yeah, don't be like
Hey, I sent all these instructions. So you know now, I have a package for anybody that's a guest host that has screen capture with arrows and labels and balloons and X's and everything else. I was like,
don't be like Alan. Don't be like Alan.
Hey, I'm gonna drop off, guys. It's been fun. Good to see everybody.
Yep.
See you later.
Bye, Stuart.
Bye, Stuart.
Bye, Stuart.
Yeah.
See ya. Bye.
I'm gonna have to follow Stuart here in a minute as well too, but I want to go back to his question though about conferences and events. And we are our industry, the hospitality industry, we are a social group, right? I mean, how many events have we all gone to where it's almost like a family reunion, where you're seeing those people that you've known from, whether it be a Hedna, a High Tech, DBS, HSMAI, whatever, take your pick, take your favorite. And when will there be that moment where we're all back together again and we can, well, not high five anymore, but elbow bump or whatever it is we're doing at that time, and because that's the nature of what we do, right? And I don't know the answer to that, but I think it's one that's worth investigating, looking into, and talking about it.
I think it probably goes to the uncertainty of what to expect as being considered safe. I think, Alan, you pointed out most of all is that when people start going through that, okay, this is okay to do, I can go that far, I can do this much or something, that they'll feel better about it. But there's going to have to be some sort of validation to that process. I think, Lily, you pointed that out. It's like there just has to be that, okay, this is now okay to think that that's safe kind of thing. So
with that, see you next week.
All right, Dean. Hey, thanks for jumping in. Thank you. Oh, but hey, talk about DerbySoft real quick, since hey, that's you.
Oh, certainly, yeah. You can find us at derbysoft.com. We specialize, of course, in connectivity, electronic distribution, and marketing services is the part that I do. If you want to get a hold of me, you can look me up at dean.schmidt@derbysoft.com or find me on LinkedIn.
Hey, Dean, before you jump off, one recommendation, just because I know a little bit from the inside out, is please tell somebody to start gathering that data you guys are just dumping on queries. Because remember, you guys are still pulling all that data query and they're dumping it every 30 days. And that would
we did put one out actually about the Chinese market not too long ago.
Okay, good. Because I mean, you guys are tapped into the main pipeline of that stuff. If anybody's going to tell about predictions of interest, you guys are going to have that before anybody else does.
Yep.
Just as a thought, we're going to catch you on another email sometime. So yeah.
Take care. See you guys.
Bye, Dean.
Yeah, that on message types for basically new reservations versus modifications and cancels. That's the biggie, right?
I can't believe they throw away their data, but they may have to, depending on their.
Well, it's just too much data. I mean, honestly, when I was under contract with them, I was jumping up and down and stomping off. He's like, "You guys are dumping data." I mean, actually, it was every 2 weeks. Some of the stuff they kept for a month, but all that stuff they were piping through, they were dumping because they did not have any storage facilities for this stuff. So it's queued up. They dumped it, and I'm like, oh my God, everybody in the world is checking on what they're looking for. Dates, rates, locations, geosourcing, all that stuff. And they're just like, out with the trash.
Hotel industry has always had and the tech portion of it has always had a problem with that. And I'm trying to think, it was 95 with the birth of Pegasus, that the initial funding was predicated on them having basically business intelligence being a fundamental cornerstone of their business, because the investors looked at it and went, oh my God, yeah, look at all this data. Yeah, we know you can charge people per net reservation. That's fine. But that's only, $10 million. Look at all this data.
And they bought driving revenue and killed it. So.
Oh yeah. Oh, just all of it. Yeah, just died. Yeah. And there was a commitment saying, yes, if we get this funding for this, we will do that. Never did it, right? And just kind of borderline criminal.
So, On any note, was there any particular article? Just, I mean, since we have a few minutes left to chit chat about, and since we're all still behind the others, was there any particular strong article that you didn't want to miss? Because you really did put some really cool articles together. The
well, and
Airbnb
I
one.
did something different this time because normally I'll look through Skift, I'll look through FocusWire, I'll look through Hotels News Now, and I'll kind of put those over first. I decided I'm not going to do any of those and see if they're interesting ones that came across without looking at those. And so I didn't really scan them. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff everywhere else. So
I like the Airbnb one because to me, okay, so the Airbnb article about what it's in trouble
Is that validated? Did anybody actually validate if that's real?
The 10%.
I don't know. Oh, here, hold on.
Oh no! Let's not do the row. Hang on.
Oh.
Before there was another Airbnb one, which is their cash flow. And
Their cash flow. I'm sorry. That's the one I was really referring to. Was the cash flow?
Oh yeah.
They're going to run out.
10% interest. Yeah, no, they're paying 10% interest. That's been validated. Yeah, this is a Wall Street Journal article. Oh yeah, no, it's Airbnb is in a state right now, which we'll see how they come out. Because I think, on Airbnb's side, I think Dean was right. Vacation rental, but more for purpose-built vacation rentals, right? Where they're just second homes and they're rented out and they're operated more like a hotel, right? Versus the residential accommodation, the host managed stuff is going to be certainly the shared accommodation. It was only 5% of their business anyway. That's gone. The residential stuff, I think, is just going to be, obliterated. And now you're kind of for these, quasi hotels, right? Which should be getting outlawed by most cities because of affordable housing. A lot of these folks who are maybe doing that to pay for these second places to make all the, the housing market collapse and things like that is going to, take a lot of those guys out. It's going to be. So
you think there is
very, very interesting. They won't
be
gone, but they're going to be greatly reduced. And their IPO, I would be surprised if it even happens next year. Right?
What happens to all those people that their options expire at the end of the year? I mean, that's going to be.
Oh no, they'll just get wiped out. Yeah, there's no. Yeah. Well, because their valuation was cut in half, right? And that valuation may 3 months from now.
Right.
Yeah, they're all under. When I worked for Budget Rent-A-Car, I got kind of not necessarily coerced, but they gave me a bunch of options, things like that, and the company's stock price was plummeting because the truck business, the car business was doing great, but yeah, I think I was there a year, and I think my options had gone from $16 to $2 or something like that, and you just looked at it, and they wound up buying them back from which I think is now illegal. Because there are certain financial regulations of doing it, but they were loaning money to the executive team so they could buy back shares to put on kind of the errors that the executive team was supporting the company, right? And just really bad situation. So yeah, they're all those guys who did. Greg Greeley, who left Amazon, who was kind of the father of Amazon Prime, who became the head of their homes group, I think is now going, damn, probably shouldn't have made that move.
So you think there's going to be a housing? There's going to be a housing drop? I mean,
oh yeah, yeah. Well, only a third of renters paid their rent last month or paid their April rent, and this is only the first month in. Right? When you're looking at 17, 18 million people are unemployed. Right, that's within 3 weeks of this happening. The global financial crisis, which as people recall was pretty damn bad, that had 16 million people over, I think, 106 weeks or something like that. Right, this is different. This is really, really different, and we're just starting into it. One thing, actually, just a little preview, because I didn't gratuitously put it into the news items, but I'm doing this thing with Focusrite for looking at these destinations. Just finished the Singapore one, which will come out on Monday. Really interesting because Singapore did almost everything right. I mean, they were all over this thing. They've only had 6 deaths in Singapore, and they've got 5.7 million population, right? Which is pretty incredible. So they had this thing. Their first case was January 23rd, and until through March 23rd, they were good. Right? Things were kind of happening. What happened? Malaysia locked down. and unfortunately, a third of Singapore's population is basically non-citizens, right? So because there's a little bit of warning, everybody went back to Malaysia to grab their stuff to go back to Singapore, so they wouldn't lose, they'd still be able to work and wouldn't get locked out between the countries, right? Well, that's a problem. Now, all of a sudden, they've had, I think yesterday they had 140 cases or something like that. They're on the way up. They've put in a circuit breaker, which the government went out, contracted 7,500 hotel rooms between various dates, but really between end of May and end of June, where anybody who comes back to the country, you are in. I mean, you're escorted from the airport, you're put into one of these places, and you're there for 2 weeks. And it's kind of like, they'll slide pizzas under the door for you, and that's about it. Or they'll leave some food outside your door. So it is locked. You can't go out in public with another person unless you reside with them. Any public not even any gatherings inside your residence. You can't even have other people over for dinner, right? And apparently and Singapore's, they used to be strict about chewing gum and they have a lot of surveillance. They're going to just be all over people. So they've done everything right. And you just look at it and go, oh my God. But their hotel industry is doing okay because the government bought the rooms, right? And so they have this people, and for workers who are, kind of in, sheltering in place and things like that. But it's going to be tricky. So what were they doing there? They were at that point, we're just going to kind of go, we're going to stay open. We're going to keep the borders open. We aren't going to do anything like that. We're doing all the right things. And it was like, damn it, that didn't work. So just my concern, I'm really happy that the cases in the US are now, progressive. We've now got a linear growth, right? It's kind of like the same number of cases sort of thing. So the line keeps going up, but at least it isn't exponential right now. But you let up on this stuff and this virus doesn't care, right? It's going to thrive on an opportunity to go do what it does best, right? It's very efficient.
So are we going to end on the boop or on the rut row?
Oh, well, I think we should do both. Actually, can I do another bad news one? U.S. is only issuing passports in emergency cases. So,
I mean, is that a big deal, though? I mean, I guess define emergency.
I don't know.
How do they define emergency, Robert?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Basically, the U.S. isn't issuing passports, and I would tying into Timothy's. Long haul travel is just going to
right, because for those people that were in renewal cycle, that means the renewal cycle is going to get stretched. So even if they were going to like for us, I have a family that's in Europe, so we would love to be able to see them, or vice versa. We have no plans on doing that in the near future, and we're not in any passport situation. But if I was in a renewal cycle and then they had to add on to that timeline as to what that would influence as to whether I could travel, that's probably going to be the ripple effect from it, I imagine. But what would be emergency is.
Another couple ones. Adara is no longer buying media for travel clients at all. So that's a pretty big change. And I thought the one that was the cybersecurity gaps just was crazy. There's an article in there talking about the numbers of websites that are getting added basically for phishing attacks. Now that you have all these folks who are working remotely, it's going to be very, very ugly. I mean, there are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of new websites being built that look similar to names are similar to all these other names. So watch out for those. And then I think maybe the boop. I thought was very nice. The Omni Hotel here has all this kind of big light array type thing, and they've been sending out really nice messages, wash your hands and we're behind, just kind of uplifting, either tips or advice, which is great. I mean, good for Omni to do that for a good purpose instead of just saying, nobody's here, we're closed, dark. That's right. And it's really prominent. I mean, it's by the highways. At least in Dallas, highways still have a lot of cars on them. People aren't taking this quite as seriously as one might think, which is kind of crazy. I mean, we've been invited over for dinners to a guy who's a doctor. I mean, a pretty experienced doctor, and some other people, and it's like, no, not really gonna.
Okay, so the Geico commercial where they go over and say, "Are you amazed that Sue just made a black hole in time transport?" And it's like, no, that Geico can give me discounts on my insurance. What
Yeah.
you just said is it might be that you were pointing at that a doctor would invite you over for dinner. I'm surprised you have friends. No.
Well, yeah, that's true. Well, they aren't friends with my wife.
I would
has
invite you over for
friends.
dinner.
My wife has friends, and then sometimes
I just had to
sometimes
do that,
I
Robert.
get to
I'm
go
sorry. You
along.
probably have 1,000 more friends than I do. I just,
Yeah.
it just was funny you were saying that. I'm like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't know Robert for dinner.
So, so do we think this rut row is real? Like, so that's been the thing. This,
Oh, yeah.
is it?
I think it is. I
'Cause it's been around for a couple of weeks now.
yeah. I believe it was a pissed off Kiwi who did
I mean, he's got the face for, like, he's just got the face for an actor.
Oh, he looks evil. I mean, just he's
Oh, yeah.
mad. I should say not evil, but mad. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Just-
and it wasn't like weirdly promoted or anything like that. So, maybe it's not legit, but the guy seemed to be just a really pissed off host. I don't know.
Well, but Airbnb did do what they're saying they're doing. They had done it. I mean, if you watch the AirDNA platform, they added a couple of new features that were pretty cool, which is predictive. It's forecasting forward on stuff, and if you look at it, the line just goes like this. And in the markets that I've got subscriptions to, it's like literally nosedive. But there has been this whole, as you're watching, because they have the percentages of when it's strict versus not strict and so forth, and they just like lit up everything as being non-stricted, and to be like, wow, And yes, I know them from a couple of markets that I have to follow on. That there was a lot of blowback on the Airbnb communities that I follow on. What did you just do to me? You didn't take any hit. I lost every bit of the cancellation fee monies and so forth.
Yeah.
I can't book. I can't even keep the people that I have in it. They can't stay longer. You just shut everything off for me. What the heck was this? So yeah, there is a legitimacy to the situation.
Airbnb was taking the hit. They weren't keeping their fee portion, right? So they're saying
Yeah.
they're giving that. Yes, but again, that's a relatively small. That's 15% of the total. Yeah, of the total take, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, and again, my thing with the rut row is, wow, if you have hosts like that, that is not anyone in the hospitality industry, right? Because it's like, screw the guests. Where's my money? You did where, in fairness to Airbnb, they did exactly what Expedia did, and there were a bunch of hoteliers pissed off about that, going, no, we're doing this for the guests. They don't have money. Let's just try not to screw people over, in this situation and go. So yeah, and again, I don't know, maybe it's a similar situation where you had really crappy travel agents who just took order and didn't really help people. And when the airlines cut commissions, that was a pretty big disruption. Those folks kind of lost their jobs, right? They weren't helping but they weren't contributing. So I would say guys like that who are that pissed off that the people who are going to stay with them aren't kind of ripped off with their money by not being able to travel, with external entities making it impossible for them to get there. Why should he get their money? Sort of thing. He certainly feels entitled, right?
Yeah.
And
I
it's
actually
like,
canceled an Airbnb because the reason I was going to travel was canceled, right? Because of the coronavirus. It just so happened that the Airbnb I booked was semi-strict or whatever. So I was still outside of the cancellation penalty date range.
Yeah.
So I communicated with them and I said, I'm not coming because the event I was going to attend has been canceled because of coronavirus. And I already knew where I stood, but it was a woman, it was an apartment in her basement. And she said, I can give you your money back. And she goes, oh, by the way, I would have done this anyway. I said, oh, that's nice.
Mm.
Yeah. And that's the right thing to do. There's kind of the human thing to do. And then there's the, I'll talk to my lawyers and you'll hear from my lawyers approach. Actually, on that note, I've got to run. I've got a client who's,
we're all good. I just want to make sure that before everyone runs, Robert, people want to know about you and your wonderful newsletter we've been referring to, where they can find you.
RockCheetah.com or Robert K. Cole on social media, or the Rock Cheetah Hospitality Update, which can be found at bit.ly /RockCheetah, all lowercase. So
excellent.
Thanks.
And Miss Falkerman, where they can find you and your podcast.
Find us at thinkupenterprises.com. I did drop a link to the podcast here in the chat a little bit ago. So it's thinkupenterprises.com /hospitality-revenue-management-the-podcast, where you can find all the show notes. Episode 2 will be out shortly. I'm going to get you that file today, Lauren. And also on social media, you'll find both Total Customized Revenue Management and ThinkUp Enterprises on both Facebook and LinkedIn, where you can find, a couple of hospitality articles, but also Cocktails in Quarantine every Friday, a new travel blog from Sandra about places that you may want to travel when this is all over, and some great ideas of things to do with your kids if you have them at home. So basically, it's a resource for all things quarantine, as well as hospitality right now.
And cooking classes if you want to know how to make great sangria.
Yet to come. But anyway, we would love to have you do that. And I also dropped a link to our book club that we're starting on Tuesday regarding The One Thing. So if you're an executive in hospitality, either at the hotel side or the vendor side, we'd love to have you join us for that.
Excellent. And Ms. Fallon, where is it they can find?
So I work for Nor1, so you can find Nor1 at www.nor1.com. I'm on LinkedIn at Valen Perini and on Twitter at Valen Perini as well.
Awesome. Ladies, thank you very much. For everyone else that joined us as well, thank you all very much for your time. We'll do show number 245 at 11:30 Eastern. Next week, we also have, if you want to do this show or previous shows, at hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/live, you can get a link to all the archives and show notes, and all the links that we both discussed and the ones that we didn't quite get to as well will also be there. And I also will have the podcast out today. And we do a weekly cocktail thing at noon called We Are Hospitality. Link will be also on the show notes as well for anybody that just wants to join in. There's no format or tracking or email gathering or anything like that. It's just people showing up to be able to spend time and share some FaceTime, chit-chatting about whatever they feel like talking about. The commonality is hospitality. That's about it. So that will be at bit.ly/We Are Hospitality if anybody wants to join for that as well. To that, thank you all very much. We will see everyone next week, hopefully. Bye now.